Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ai. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Always lovely to have you here. It's been a long time again. However, I'm just dealing with life post-grad, navigating transitions and whatnot, and dealing with unprecedented times over and over and over. However, my unprecedented time cannot be as bad as many families in the United States who are currently being torn apart as we speak because of Donald Trump and ICE. If you don't live under a rock, you have most definitely heard about all of the protests and demonstrations that have been happening in the United States that have been going against the Trump administration and their policies, specifically targeting a lot of Hispanic communities. If you care about your community members, please check out all of the links in my description. Show up however you can, whether it's through a donation, through a signature, through protest. Everything is in the description. If there's anything that you can do, please do it. Even if it's not your community being affected currently, it is just a matter of time before it's you or someone that you love. So if there's anything that you can do to help out your community members, please check out the links in my description. I cannot emphasize how important it is to fight for one another, especially now. Just because it's not your community does not mean it cannot be you, okay? And just because it's not your community doesn't mean you shouldn't care. If you're Black, if you're a hijabi, all of this, everything that is going on should concern you. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about today's video, which is all about prom. So it's June, which means it is prom season in New York City. Oh, by the way, do you guys like my new mic arm? I got two hands, yeah. But anyways, it is prom season in New York City, which is why I wanted to do this video. Well, I think it's prom season because I remember my prom was in June, like late June. So I'm assuming, the city is around this time. So I was like, why not research prom, the racist history of prom? Where did prom come from? Why do we do it? Let's get into it. So when we think about prom, a lot of us think about corsages, the dresses, the nice little tugs, the awkward maybe slow dances. Even though I only saw slow dances in films and TV, I never really heard a slow song at prom before or like seen it. I'm sure it exists. But the slow dances, that's a big thing with prom. But prom didn't start in high schools. It actually started in elite college campuses in banquets or debutante balls. Debutante balls are a formal social event often associated with debutantes or young women who are presented to society as they come of age. Originally, this was a way to announce a young woman's eligibility for marriage, and it has now often focused on community charity and celebrating the transition to adulthood. It's important to note that these balls were very much exclusive to white young women, usually in between the ages of 16 and 21. It is important to note, though, that since there was a small percentage of freed Black people in America, debutante balls were more so known as cotillions to the Black community, also existed within that space. The first recorded African American ball was mentioned in a New Jersey newspaper, the New Jersey Gazette, back in 1778, and it was called the Ethiopian Ball. The first official cotillion, though, is often credited to a Chicago organization called the Original Illinois Club, which still hosts balls to this day. Freed Black folks were honestly reflecting what they saw in larger society, using events like cotillions to show that they could also hold themselves to the same standards of elegance and order as their white counterparts. But Black cotillions weren't really about the tradition and status. They more so helped young Black people, especially girls, prepare for adulthood. They emphasized things like education, career readiness, and responsibility. This emphasis in education and career readiness, though, isn't a cause for why there was a rise in Black women pursuing their higher education, but it is one of the many reasons why a lot of people had that access, or a lot of Black women had that access. That being said, it's important to remember that cotillions were originally for freed Black people, which means that enslaved Black people were excluded. And because of that, cotillions became something more common in wealthier Black communities, and that sense of exclusivity still exists today. And honestly, that's why I personally don't think cotillions are that Black coming of age event that a lot of people say that they are for the Black community. I think that prom takes that role because it's a bit more accessible and widespread. I've always found the idea of Black cotillions really interesting. They're great for teaching responsibility and helping young people get ready for the real world, but at the same time, I feel like it carries a lot of respectability politics. So it's kind of hard to navigate. But even so, I'm happy that we made a space for ourselves in traditions like these. As early as the 1870s, though, places like Harvard and Smith College were hosting what they called promenades. These events were exclusive, signaling a young person's readiness for adult society. By the 1930s and 40s, proms trickled into high schools as the US middle class grew. They became a democratized version of the debutante ball. They were still formal, still about tradition, but now it is a mass market capitalistic rite of passage, especially as teenagers became a more prominent consumer demographic around the 40s and 50s. During this time as well, prom moved from gyms to ballrooms and venues, and they also introduced prom royalty like kings and queens. There were also many cultural milestones that really solidified prom's cultural significance in American society. One of them being JFK, who attended a high school prom in 1963, and Susan Ford, who held the first and only White House prom in 1975. After this, in the 60s and 70s, there was a bit of a dip, but the 80s brought a resurgence of prom culture through media. We saw prom being shown in many teen films like Pretty in Pink, Footloose, and Teen Wolf. However, prom can be very costly. A 2015 survey showed that prom can cost up to $919 per student, and that was 2015. It's been 10 years since then. We can only imagine what that number is now. On TikTok, a lot of people break down how much they spend on all of the prom things. That's the car, the dress, the prom send-off, all these things, and I've seen prices go up to $20,000 even. However, despite prom's growing significance in American society, specifically teenage culture, segregation still persisted. Some schools, especially in the South, held separate proms for Black and white students up until as late as 2013. Yes, 2013, a little bit over a decade ago, there were still segregated proms. Specifically, a school in Wilcox County, Georgia, held its first integrated prom in that same year.
People of all colors who for the first time will celebrate prom together. After a short trip to neighboring Crisp County, a dream is now a reality.
For a lot of our Black youth, prom is not just some high school event, okay? One article explains that a lot of families in Philly spend months planning prom send-offs that look like red carpet premieres, with DJs, tents, food, dance crews, and a community that shows up for their kids. Black prom has been described as bigger than weddings for a lot of people. And at this point, I can even argue that prom looks different based on where in the United States you're at. So when I was younger, I did not see that many prom send-offs. Maybe that's just because like they weren't as big on social media because TikTok wasn't a thing back then. I thought prom send-offs were kind of like exclusive to people in the South. Not really sure why, but I feel like they probably have they're very big on community in the South. I feel like prom is bigger in the South than it is up here. That's just what I feel though. I don't think that's a fact. It's just an opinion. But yeah, prom can definitely look different in the South than it does up north. For example, lots of time when I see people being extravagant with prom, they are from the South. Whether it's them showing up on a horse or even showing up on a camel, anyways, Black youth, they show up and they show out, okay? And these moments are bigger than aesthetics. They essentially our joyful resistance. When you've been excluded for so long, showing up and showing out eventually becomes radical. Prom is one of the few instances that Black youth get a chance to become storytellers, to become creatives, to tell everyone that they exist and that they matter. And it's a chance for a lot of low-income Black teens to feel centered and loved because the entire community steps up and shows out, not just them. Prom is honestly a cultural sanctuary that reclaims space and joy. It is an intergenerational event of Black pride and visibility. It's a community investment from tailors, stylists, parents. They all contribute. It really is one of those village moments. And I feel like living in America, because our society is so individualistic, you really don't get that often, which is why anytime I see prom send-offs and people showing up for their community, I always get so happy because I'm just like, wow, I love that for them. I love that for us. In terms of prom fashion, honestly, the boys, they just be suiting it up. But the girls, they do what needs to be done every single year. Prom fashion does have its own trend cycle. When I was a teenager, I remember the really big flowy trains being in. Now I've noticed that a lot of prom dresses are starting to look like Nigerian wedding dresses, and I don't personally have a problem with that. I feel like I'm not Nigerian, so I can't say. Me personally, if I was Nigerian, I wouldn't have a problem with it because I'm just like, wow, like, you know, you're bringing more visibility to a lot of overlooked Nigerian stylists. But I have noticed that a lot of people are getting their prom dresses from Nigerian stylists because they look so good. They look beautiful. And if you look deeper into the past, you'll see that the styles back then were very much different than what we have now. I feel like a lot of communities have what is similar to prom or stepping into the adult world that the Black community doesn't. And that's maybe a big reason why the Black community steps out for prom and make sure that they go out with a bang, you know? I can think of a lot of African communities that have these events for their youth where they get a chance to celebrate their youth and step into adulthood. White communities also have this in the United States with the Debutante Balls. These Debutante Balls also still happen to this day. Hispanic communities have quinceañeras where they can step out as well. But Black communities don't. They have prom, which is absolutely okay. Prom is also one of the most iconic high school events depicted in American film and TV, and this really shaped how we viewed prom growing up. Hollywood has historically centered white middle-class prom narratives and often ignored or stereotyped Black teens. These films build the mythology of prom as the ultimate teenage rite of passage with romance, popularity, and transformation. But Black prom culture exists largely outside this mainstream narrative. So when Black teens go all out, it's a subversion of the prom myth. This is all to say that Black teens in America really had to make a space and solidify that space. Make sure that that space does not get taken away from them. And every single year I see this being reinforced. However, there are many people that try to tear Black teens down when they're just trying to be happy. And this is very much rooted in anti-Blackness. Black prom's extravagance is often policed, unlike white displays of wealth. A lot of the times when you see someone going all out for prom, if you go in the comments, you'll see people saying, oh, I'm gonna tell FAFSA, oh, all this money for prom, but you're going to community college, all this money for prom, but you're taking out loans, It's a double standard, okay? And some of this criticism comes from Black people themselves. That is internalized racism doing its work. Prom at some point becomes a political act. I know, like, it's not that deep, but it is that deep. It declares Black youth as worthy of celebration, community investment, and public space. It's about showing up in a world that has long tried to make you disappear, and every single crystal, every single gem on that dress, every single rented Rolls Royce, every rented horse, camel, all of it.
I want something that says I'm here. Beyonce.
I remember when I went to prom, it was fun. It was nice. I had a lot of fun. I was not a hijabi back then, so I'll see if I can post some pictures. I might have to cover my arms and stuff. But yeah, it was super nice. I wore a little black and gold moment, spent $100 on my dress, or my mom did. Shout out to my mom. Shout out to my mom. I loved my dress. It was so cute. I actually don't know where it is. I don't remember throwing it out or putting it anywhere. It kind of just disappeared. I would love to know if you guys have any cultural high school events like this where you kind of move from one part of your life to another, because I feel like they definitely exist in a lot of cultures, but besides prom, I can't really think of anything. That is all I have for you guys today. As always, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Go check out my podcast. It's actually moved to a different channel just because I feel like I have two different vibes. Like that vibe for my podcast is more like I discuss my faith a lot. I talk about girlhood and just things, and I feel like here I'm a bit more serious. Anyways, yes, make sure to donate, sign something, show up for your community members. Check out the links in my description. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope to see you in the next one.